world. My next guest needs no introduction. With extensive B2B and SaaS marketing leadership experience, helping high growth companies scale from startups to market leaders, she's done it all. Her notable career stops include Salesforce and Spiff and Zoom Info, just to name a few. Please join me in welcoming Anna Fisher, CMO of Kustomer, to the show. Anna, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Hi, I'm ready. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We've been counting down because we know that when it comes to B2B marketing, you are one of the best I think we've ever known. So, really excited to have you on the show. And as this is the Radically Transparent podcast, I want to kick off with asking you, what is keeping you up at night these days professionally?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a few things that keep me up at night. Well, first of all, I'm responsible for generating the pipeline for our organization. So I manage our marketing, our SDR, and our partnership team. And so generating pipeline and revenue is the number one thing that keeps me up at night, keeps me up during the day. I think about it all the time. How do we drive meaningful growth for our organization? And then I would say the second thing that's probably somewhat more recent, which is how do we go through an AI transformation within our marketing organization? How do we continue to do even more with less or the same? And how do we do it as efficiently and effectively as possible without burning out the entire organization with asking people to do even more?
Yeah, so do you sleep at all?
Sometimes, yes, I do sleep. I do.
Absolutely. No, listen, I think B2B marketers, we all know and feel the pain. When pipeline is strong, everyone loves sales. When pipeline is less strong, it's the Hunger Games for us. So with that being said, I want to think back and take a moment to reflect on a year ago because a year ago, I think B2B leaders, we were really losing sleep over probably more alignment and messaging and are we on brand? And then introduce AI. And as you mentioned, right, AI transformation, how do we do more with less of the same? And we're seeing that not only across the entire organization, but when we look at pipeline. What do you think is the scariest part about trying to build, I'll call it like the single marketing brain for the organization, especially when we have this AI transformation that, I mean, it's changing so quickly. I feel tomorrow we'll be having a different conversation.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible question. I think every marketing organization is facing that same challenge because as more and more people leverage AI, there's more danger of them being off brand, right? Not everybody even reads the output that they've created. And so creating this idea of a marketing brain or what is the messaging and positioning you want your organization to follow and feeding that into your Claude skills or your Claude so that everybody does have that same starting point. We've been able to do that here and centralize it in a way where any sequence, any output actually leverages that skill of what is the messaging and positioning that we've created and everybody's aligned to. And that way, again, our outputs are at least aligned with what our point of view is as a brand, what our messaging is, again, without minimizing the opportunity for people to be themselves and giving them a chance to actually have a point of view. But again, how do we give them a starting point that is more unified as one organization? And in the past, you'd have to have multiple meetings to talk about it. And now we do have the opportunity to just update some cloud skills and continuously run those updates anytime we launch new features or solutions or have a new point of view. We can update that skill so that, again, everybody has full access to all of those. Again, and it is more of like a marketing brain. It's beyond even just messaging and positioning. It's our ICP. Who do we go after? Who are the buyers? How do you communicate with different buyers? So, for example, we might communicate differently with a B2B company as a B2C company. They have a different vocabulary and a different way they would utilize our solution. And so we want to be really prescriptive and help our team out as much as possible by creating that sort of infrastructure for everybody.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how far it's come, and we'll get into it a little bit later on in the show. But I don't think right now there's any B2B company saying, right, like AI makes us faster, or like we're all saying, right, it's making us faster, smarter, and better. And where I start to worry, right, is if we're all becoming faster, smarter, and better, and we're all using the same tools to become faster, smarter, and better, does that mean we're all using the same AI playbooks? And if we're all using the same AI playbooks, how on earth, right? The famous question where we're always trying to stand above the noise, but how do we stand out anymore in an authentic way that we can actually drive awareness above
Yeah.
the noise and not sound like everybody else in the market?
Yeah, I love that. I think about that actually all the time. And I think the way that we help our company and our just our teams continue to be authentic is to bring them like what is the piece that is uniquely human? So there are so many things we can automate, and there's so many things. And again, when I get automated sequences that I can tell have absolutely zero personalization, and I don't mean about me. I mean there's zero like anybody could have written it. It wasn't the specific person, then I sort of delete that. And so I think even like when I take the BDR team as an example, there's so much we can automate, and we do. But then how do they pick up the phone and do the thing that is again uniquely human, and that's talk to a human and connect with a human and understand like what are the things that would make that specific person respond to them and have just like an honest conversation. And I think brands in general need to do more of that. And I've found that social media is a really good way to do that. Again, now I know there's a lot of AI throughout social media, but sometimes you can sort of tell the difference. And that's when people coming in with their background and their point of view, those are the types of posts that I read and I listen to. Anything that has like that story where you can like empathize or identify with that person, those are the types of brands that I think are going to be more and more successful as everything becomes more and more automated and more AI driven. Those are the things that I think about all the time too, even in relation to our own brand. So our logo is a yellow smiley face, and that's somewhat on purpose. I think there's something very human about like just seeing a logo that is bright and makes you smile. At least it makes me smile. Again, I'm pretty biased here, but especially as things become more and more automated, that like human touch is essential. And the space that customer sells into is customer experience. And those are buyers who are thinking all the time about how they delight and retain and make their end customers happy. And so always thinking about that, like what is that human piece? Because there's so many things you just want automated. You just want an answer quickly, right? That fine, let's solve for that. But for the out cases or the things that are a bit more complex or require human intervention, I think the more time you can allocate and remove some of like the boring, mundane work, the more you can spend time actually delighting customers, and that's across the board in every industry.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said now, that the piece of being able to automate in B2B marketing and take out the manual, the heavy tasks to allow us to really focus on the relationship building. I really hope we see brands going more in that direction. I couldn't agree more. You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier on Claude. I know Claude, every marketing circle, they go on YouTube, influencer, TikTok, wherever, B2B marketing and Claude are going hand in hand. So I know you've been leveraging Claude MCP's data sets to work smarter, and I'm sure your output is higher. But I want to ask for a moment. Well, productivity, we all know, is a great internal metric, and I think as marketers, we're so good at being productive.
Yes.
But it doesn't always build pipeline, and it doesn't always, just because you're super productive, doesn't necessarily mean it's moving the needle, especially when it comes to revenue. How do you stop your team from falling into that high output, look at me, I'm super productive, uh, I would say
Yeah.
experience when the ultimate goal truly for every B2B marketer is pipeline revenue and moving the needle?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. So I mean, especially in marketing, there are key KPIs that we know we need to accomplish to hit that ultimate goal. And some things take a long time. And I think in a business like ours that I'm in today, I don't have the luxury of this enormous team where like anything I can think of, we can execute on. And so the ability to leverage Claude and just AI in general has given us the ability to go faster and do things that maybe we wouldn't have done at our size or our scale yet, but that we know will eventually move the needle. And so, in terms of how we measure, we have these like, what are the incremental improvements? What are the incremental outputs we're trying to accomplish? There's certain hypotheses that we've made. So, for example, um, personalized outreach and personalized landing pages should, right? Not always, but should have a higher output of the people we're going after. Historically, that's been incredibly difficult to do at scale, but now with LLMs and we've built our entire website on AI. And what I mean by that is we didn't use AI to like for the content, but the infrastructure, which means on my team, we have people who can automate, and like we have templates and all these things we've created can automate creating truly personalized landing pages for the brands that we're going after, especially in an ABM type motion, where they have the opportunity once they've done the research to create these outputs. And the idea is like now we can do this at scale. So it's something we would have done anyways. We would have just taken a week per campaign, or it would have just taken time. And now we don't have like the productivity gains, but the output is still the same expectations. Another example is I have an incredible content writer, and he's worked for me in the past. And we've done this thing called we've stood up a glossary page in the past. And again, nowadays it's even more important for LLMs to read. But like if you're trying to actually create thought leadership and there's certain terms that are specific to your industry, how do you create how do you create these pages? And then again, so historically, that's taken a long time. I probably wouldn't have even thought about doing that yet because we have so many things we're trying to accomplish here. But because we have the ability to publish that quickly, and again, we're still creating the content, right? With support of LLMs for ideas potentially, content is still authentically ours. How do we now publish that in a more um, effective way and start to measure results? Because we also now have better tools to measure results, which is the other piece of that puzzle. So we're doing more, but we're able to measure more, and so we're able to fail fast or figure out what's actually working, so that we can ultimately impact that overall target, which is pipeline, that we measure from every channel and that we measure from every outcome, and then ultimately, obviously, revenue, which is
Yeah.
the most important thing.
The most important thing.
Yeah,
I
the most
couldn't,
important part.
and I know that when it comes to the glossary pages, when you and I caught up, you had mentioned the glossary pages and glossary in general, it's a massive project. And as it is designed for SEO and AEO.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've been able to do it faster and more productively, which is fantastic. And shout out to the content marketer as well. So gotta ask, if your board looks at you now, right, that you have this glossary in motion, right, and says this took a ton of time and resources. How are you measuring this today? What would your honest, unfiltered answer be, knowing that in marketing, right, some
Yeah.
metrics just take time?
That one takes time, and it's probably not a metric I would report on. I mean, ultimately, the the output is ideally that we have more traffic to our website, better pickups from LLMs, right? So that's the measurable piece. What I would say is that we have a lot of those projects, probably 50 of them, that are things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do that now we can. And one individually probably isn't going to make, that spike up into the right, but like how do we like the combination of all of these things is what we can start to see have an actual impact. And so the way that I would even talk about it to the board, and every board meeting they're asking, right? Like whatever, I'm sure everyone's getting asked, like, how are you leveraging AI? That's just one example of something that I can point to. There are so many of these instances and so many of these like I don't want to call them one off, but tactics that we're going towards for these ultimate goals that we're trying to accomplish. And again, with a team, I only have one content writer. Historically, in other organizations, I've had teams of people who can accomplish these goals. And so we are able to do a lot. Obviously, he has to be, his name is Sam, and he has to be like, he has to know what he's doing, right? Just giving him a tool if he didn't know what he was trying to accomplish wouldn't have those same good results. But because he's able to leverage experience he has and work smarter with the technology that he has, he's able to have just a much higher, more productive, but also more effective output that I think would just take a lot more hours in the day had he not had these tools. And honestly, ultimately, as marketers, I think we've always had technology and tools to do certain things more effectively and efficiently. So this is just sort of that next evolution of being able to do even more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's exciting and it's stressful all at the same time. Now I have to ask a question, right? So we're talking about metrics, we're talking about measuring. So when you look at your dashboards and your metrics and you see that performance is improving month over month, and it's really exciting when we see that, especially when we see those uplifts. Do you ever look at the data and honestly ask yourself, okay, wait a minute, is this happening because my team is getting better at using AI and this is fantastic because we're getting it? Or is the AI just doing the heavy lifting and it's the AI. How do you separate the human brilliance from the AI efficiency, or do you at all?
Yes, I absolutely do. And this is where maybe it's not, I have a bit of an unpopular opinion here. I still think it's all about the people. There is so much that we've been able to accomplish, but that's because I have intelligent and hardworking people behind the effort that they're putting forward. And it's yes, they're able to do more with AI. Yes, AI helps with a bigger output. But if I put someone who really doesn't understand that specific motion or that isn't an expert in that area behind the wheel, so to speak, I don't believe that we would have the same outputs. We would have outputs, but I just don't know if they would be, again, like, would it just be AI mush? Or would it be actually something that a human can review and identify and figure out, like, yep, this is exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And I do think that it varies based on certain industries, right? Or specific roles, like within marketing, I think it's really important that there's people who actually understand the function, right? I think in marketing, almost every person on my job does a different job.
Yeah.
They have a different skill set. And so teaching Claude the specific skills and identifying the specific outputs and continuing to adjust is super important. Because again, even if I go in and I just want to create like a blanket output, it's not usually, it's not usually this like well put together, let's just say nothing I would want to put out on behalf of our brand unless it's really thought through um, with the customer or the human that we're trying to target in mind.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to shift for a moment to
Yeah.
automation and authenticity. And I know this is a bit of a debate and also a balance. We know that LLMs, I think LinkedIn is actually number one or number two as like a trusted source for LLMs these days.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic, right? Because B2B marketers, we all love LinkedIn. We all know we need to be on it. You hinted at it earlier with like the authentic human voices and employees on social, right? This is all great. But we also know that the LLMs, they care less about the corporate brand pages. And as a marketing leader, how are you scaling that authenticity? And we talked a little bit about, keeping the messaging aligned with the skills and making sure everyone's aligned without making your people look like corporate robots, right? Because today we can
Yeah.
use MCP and we can give, seven, eight different variations of, thoughtful advocacy content. But at the end of the day, it is about those authentic human voices.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I also think about quite frequently. Anytime we have a launch or an announcement, we do find there's people, there's always people who are going to just reshare, and that's amazing. That's great. I appreciate that. Genuinely, I do. I don't want to make it sound like that's not enough because doing, even that, that's great. What I found works even better is when people add in their own perspective or point of view. And we are trying to find ways to do that make it easier for people to do that because I also recognize that sellers, as an example, they don't necessarily maybe have time to be on LinkedIn and creating their own point of view on a daily post, right? Like I get that. And so we are trying to do these interviews for people, maybe like even 10 minutes, just to understand like what is their opinion on something so that if we're going to create content on their behalf, that it is again more in line with their specific viewpoint or their specific role or their experience. And then how do we sort of leverage that so that they have like minimal edits that they need to make if they're leveraging again, as we queue up, as you mentioned, as we queue up some posts for them to leverage, how do they either adjust them or have something in their queue that is actually something they would post themselves, something that they would believe themselves, and how do we just make that easier for them to do as much as possible from my team?
Yeah, yeah. Agreed. Now, a few years back, we had a professor of media communication, mass communication on the show, and he had brought up a really interesting discussion around marketing on social media and specifically around performance and how, right, like the whole goal is to make sure you have high engagements. And so you're really writing this content to perform, if you will, but needs to be authentic. And I feel in the age of AI, we've kind of, it's similar discussions, but in the realm of automating a human voice versus that authentic voice coming to light. Do you ever feel as a marketing I would say a marketeer, put aside even leader, but like as a marketeer where our blood is about like the creativity and driving do you ever feel conflicted as a marketer about automating human voices versus just letting those voices be authentic because we know at scale that's where we're going to move the needle?
Yeah, I think that we have people within our organization that definitely leverage some of like the things happening within our organization as a suggestion, and their posts are always incredibly authentic, and I would actually argue probably get the most engagement because they're telling the story from their point of view, from how they've helped other customers, they can or they name names, right? Like there are way those are the posts that honestly even perform, right? If we want
Yeah.
to use that same vocabulary, perform the best, because I think they start real conversations. And so when I think about engagement and people leveraging and posting, like, yes, there's so much we can automate. But if those people aren't even interested in the topic of what they've just posted and aren't engaging and having conversations, then it sort of does feel like you're just, checking the box, taking the step. It's incredibly tactical. Um, and not every topic is going to resonate with everybody. And so we do want to give our teams, especially if they are leveraging LinkedIn, we want to give them suggestions or things they could think about or things we're thinking about or interesting. If we have thought leadership content that we've created, it's an asset that they can review or leverage to start those conversations. And that's also why we definitely celebrate people who are posting and engaging because we believe that like me personally, I'm not going to have every one of our prospects or customers or even people who might be interested in this topic. I'm not going to be connected to all of them, but the combination of everybody within our organization are going to be connected to people who are usually more interested in those same types of topics. How do we solve problems? And so that does create higher engagement. I also think it helps build trust that we know what we're talking about. And again, just posting from even the customer account, like again, we post all the time. There's fun videos. We have a great social media person who's always on, always engaging, like finding like things that we're doing that are cool or interesting. But that alone isn't going to help sort of raise our brand equity or our brand trust. It's really the combination of everybody truly engaging and having conversations, not just, posting and forgetting about it.
Absolutely. So listen, if you could give one piece of radically transparent advice to a fellow B2B marketing leader who sympathizes and is also perhaps drowning in the AI pressure to hit a pipeline goal, use AI, how are you using AI? And totally terrified of getting left behind, right? You wake up and it's like, if you haven't done this, you're behind. What
Yeah.
would it be?
Oh gosh. I think sometimes the job of boards is to to put fear into everybody to say like everyone's behind. Um, I think we're just getting started with this with what AI can help us do and how we're going to transform our marketing organizations. So the best thing that I did myself when we rolled out Claude as an example to the organization, we started with the executive team,
Mhm.
and it was really uh, it was an incredible blessing because I was able to jump in and like see what I could do myself before. It was like 2 days before we rolled it out to the team. So that when I rolled it out, I used a real example of like I, this is what I did. This is how it helped and leveraging. And so as a team, we continue to give each other examples. And every time we have a an all marketing meeting, we like highlight things that have worked for us so that it helps like get the ideas flowing of what is possible. Because I think starting with just a blank slate, which is literally what you start with when you have Claude, right? It's just like, what are you doing? And having an idea of what is the thing you're trying to accomplish. Just pick one thing and start to build. And I think that idea of like that like builder's mindset, like you're starting to build something and you're seeing an output and then you adjust it and just seeing that one incremental win, I think helps fuel and reduces the idea of fear because it's not that it's hard. It's just hard to start sometimes, right? And I mean, I always try not to, I try to lead with empathy and not say, oh, it's so easy, but like my kids can use it. Like literally my kids now, they used to say like search it up on Google. And now they're like, where can you open Chat GPT? Like they've moved. So we as an industry have to also move and just try it. And at the end of the day, I think that's how you start to see results is when you, again, don't just, it's not, don't pick something so random. Pick a real target goal, a key KPI that you're actually trying to accomplish. And that's where I've seen the needle move that way, even for me internally, like how, you know, I'm going to stand in front of my whole team and say, okay, everyone has to do this without showing and leading by example of one example that I've done myself.
Yeah, I love that. I actually think that's fantastic advice and kind of starting with the art of the possible because I think that's brilliant. And I think hopefully more and more marketers and marketing teams will start doing that where sometimes we say here Octopus lead from the front, but I think that's where it comes from. To wrap up the show, I've got to ask, it's my favorite question. If you could tell us one thing about yourself that we actually can't learn about you from your LinkedIn profile or asking AI, what would it be?
Can I ask my AI that? No. That's probably the toughest question you've asked me today. Hard to talk about myself. I think the one thing you probably wouldn't know from my LinkedIn is that Russian is actually my first language, and I learned English when I was 6 when we immigrated here.
Wow.
And yeah, that was probably the one thing because you definitely I don't post about that ever, but I think that was an incredible experience, and I think it's one of those things that I always think about when approaching any new people is like you never know people's backgrounds, so kind of just get to know them truly first. Yeah, I think that's the one thing I would think of.
I love that. Well, keep me honest. I took Russian in college for a semester. Spasiba. Thank you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Spasiba, for sharing that with us. It's really fascinating. Languages are fantastic, and the more you know, I think, especially today where the world has just become a very connected place, even better. Anna,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure getting radically transparent together, and we'll have to have you back 6 months' time and see where the AI revolution has taken us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast brought to you by Octopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and Director of Product and Customer Marketing at Octopost. If you love today's show and want us to create even more radically transparent content, we'd love for you to follow, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, simply scroll to ratings and reviews and tap those 5 stars. For more discussion on B2B marketing, be sure to follow Octopost on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to www.octopost.com.